Hey Taurus, here to do your monthly astrological report for the month of May 2025. And it's a pretty big month because we have Saturn changing signs, and Saturn stays in a sign for about 2.5 to 3 years. So when it shifts a sign, you feel it. It's a very tangible shift in the energies. And it will be moving from your 11th house into your 12th house. So I'm going to go ahead and share my notes here. Um, so. The first of the month starts out with the sun in your sign, and you had a new moon at the end of last month in your first house. So there's some new auspicious seeding beginning that is a new you, that is a version of a new you, as shall we say, another version of you, a more authentic version of you. And then the sun is going to move into your second house, which is finance and money and possessions and value system. So basically, you're going to be nurturing this new growth. And then when the sun moves into Gemini on the 20th, you're going to be talking about it, selling it, posting on social media, writing emails, but being very focused on transforming this idea into a financial, abundant outcome. And then you're also going to have Mercury in your 12th house, where you have been doing some real reflecting on. Interesting, because you're about to have Saturn in your 12th house. So with Mercury there and with Aries over your 12th, you would have done a lot of reflecting on where you have come so far, some things about your communication ways, perhaps the ways that you communicate that are too brash or too quick or too or aren't thought out. So basically, when a planet reaches a 12th house, we're doing a lot of introspection around some lessons that we've learned around that planet and what that planet represents, or the houses that it rules in our chart. And for Taurus, Mercury rules your second house of money and your fifth house. So perhaps friendships and relationships too. The second house can be a relationship house too. So perhaps reevaluating or seeing some of the results that you have to pay for, or sort of karmic retributions around perhaps how you've been handling relationships. Okay, so that's wrapping up in the month of May. Then you get your Mercury in your first house, where you have a lot of clarity about perhaps who are the right relationships to be in. But again, there's that new moon coming in on that first house. So Mercury comes in and joins in on that new moon, more ideas to flesh out that new beginning, that new birth that's happening on that new moon. And then when Mercury at the end of the month moves into your second house, it joins the sun, where you're quite motivated, talking to people, emailing, and creating financial, shall we say, momentum around this new idea. And with Mercury there, you're being quite proactive. And Mercury in Gemini is very chitty chatty. So there's a lot of chatty and talking to people, and perhaps income of money coming in through that. And then you're going to have Venus throughout the month in your 12th house. Again, ending and wrapping up a relationship and reevaluating and assessing any sort of karmic retribution that may have occurred in any relationships. This is the end of the road, most likely relationship ending or a patterning in your relationships ending, and reevaluating, shall we say, the relationships that you do desire. Aries is very much about desire. And also, it's about income. So, all things Venus. And then mid May, Venus and Mercury are going to be out of the shadow of retrograde. So, then there's really going to be a feeling, even though Venus is in your 12th house, there is forward motion, things starting, things happening and moving in relationships, um, or in resolving issues in relationships. Then we're going to have Mars in your fourth house. And that is, Mars is in a very fiery, creative, passionate sign. So there's some sort of movement happening in your real estate, property, living situation, where you're either moving or you're taking action. You have a lot of energy in around your fourth house. Maybe you're decorating it, feeling very inspired about improving it, or very inspired to start a new family. It's a creative energy. So creative self-expression can occur in that fourth house. So maybe you start creative projects, you move and or you start creative projects at home, or you move and that is a creative project, and you start designing and decorating a new location. So that's going to make your month of May kind of busy there with that Mars in your fourth house, and Mercury in fire, and all those planets going into Gemini. So there's a busy energy, a lot of movement happening, a lot of shifts occurring. And then you have Jupiter in your second house. So your finances are expanding here. There's a big push for financial expansion, income earning increase. And with Jupiter there, you're really evaluating and wanting to, shall we say, find alternative ways or other, shall we say, other ways of making money. There's a word for it. A side hustle, but some kind of a creative. Now, again, the second house is often talent. When I see people with planets in the second house, they're almost always artists, always. So second house is a Venus house, and it is a Taurus house, which means it is about finances, money, relationship, but also aesthetics and beauty and what we desire. So with Jupiter there, your desires are pronounced. And in a way, that's good because it gives you clarity about what you truly want to do and how you want to earn your money. So you're probably evaluating or what do we call it? Reflecting on other ways of creating income and expanding your income. Then Jupiter is going to move into Cancer, into your third house in June 9th, which is go time for a business or self starting a project. Then we have Saturn moving into your 12th house. Now, that's the biggie. That's the big transit happening on 5/25. And Saturn in your 12th house is sort of like a time where you really reap what you have sown because it's the end of the cycle. Even though you have Aries in your 12th, you're taking very proactive uh, initiatives to really buckle down and learn what you have not learned or to correct what you have not mastered and to become because now these new changes are occurring. Saturn in your 12th is making you realize there's something you need to know more about. There's something you need to learn about. I had Mars in my 12th house once for 2 months, and I studied like crazy. I went 12th house is sort of being isolated, and I studied astrology and I studied transits like in depth. So it's like when you have Saturn in your 12th house, you're going to be very focused on mastering and learning something that you may have slipped, that may have not that is going to be an important part of this Jupiter in your 12th, in your second, where it's expanding your finances. So there's something you have to rework, redo, or you're just evaluating where you've come so far, um, and making a new assessment about where you want to go when Saturn moves into your first house, which is very, very, very huge new cycle starting where you take on some sort of big new responsibility or you retire or there's some sort of big shift there. In your life with Saturn moving into your first, you become very serious and very hardworking. But when it's in your 12th, you're preparing for that, and you're really assessing what you've reaped. You're experiencing what you've reaped, and now if what you reap is really okay, and you've really you really have, shall we say, obeyed Saturn while it traveled through all your other 12 signs. When it's in your 12th sign, then you're reaping the rewards. So it is a very serious energy to have Saturn in your 12th. This is where you really do reshape who you are from that. You really find you take that some things or some things you've done in your past, you start to take some of the choices that you've made very seriously and you start to really want to make different choices and you have a very sort of resolve and a new maturity in about life. So that is a brief look at Saturn there because there's so much more to talk about with Saturn. Um, Now, I'm just going to leap to the North Node there being in your 11th house, and that's going to stay there for the whole year still, where you do start to meet fated people, connections, tribe. You're more involved in the community, out in the world, where you meet fated relationships that are really part of your dharma, that are really part of your purpose, that are really shift your destiny in quite a big way. And it's very lucky and abundant to have the North Node in the 11th house. Uh, these are new connections that bring fated abundance that really align with your dharma, which is your calling and your purpose. And then we have the full moon in your seventh house. So we see either a relationship ending and a culminating. It's at 22 degrees of Scorpio. So that is an energy of resolving and sort of the end of the line in a relationship, or the end of a pattern of making the relationship your priority because of all this other stuff going on. You have to put your relationship more in the backdrop if you're in your true relationship, or your relationship and you both join together and you have a collaborative venture together. You've seen the stability of the relationship, and that it can, and that you then take it to another cycle, another cycle, a full moon cycle, basically another year in this relationship, to either to mend it or to align the relationship in a more healthy way. In other words, to be aligned in the relationship in a more healthy way that is productive, less codependent. Um, And then with the new moon in your second house in the end of May, and there's Saturn in in your 12th house shifted, this new moon in your second house is the financial. Well, first of all, there's going to be communication, information coming in. It's a busy time for you, Taurus, in May. And when your ruling planet Venus comes out of shadow, things are very blessed and moving forward. And then with that new moon in your second house, you're really seeing money coming in, income coming in. You really see your value. And also you're going to be, if you're not valuing yourself, you don't see your worth, that will show that you're reflecting that in your financial income. So in this new moon, you kind of see very clearly that you're undercharging yourself, you're undervaluing yourself. Or if you're valuing yourself enough, you see the results of your level of self-value and you see a new auspicious financial income coming in as a result of the shift that happened on your new moon in Taurus, where you became more yourself and you became more confident about who you are, and this new idea or new beginnings coming in now start to bear fruit, or the connections are starting to come in that will eventually bear the fruit, or there's some sort of advertising or a new beginning with media communication that then exposes you, because really with a new moon in your first house you become the product of to advertise as it were. Then you have more recognition, more notoriety, what your ideas and what you want to do and who you are is now becoming more public, and evolves into a stable, financial, progressive outcome. So that is a look at your month. Of course, month of May. Of course, if you want a personal reading, do contact me, because personal readings are way more accurate. But this is a look at how the month looks for the sign of Taurus in May 2025. I hope you had a wonderful day. Namaste.